The humid air of St. Augustine clung to me like a second skin as I stood outside the old Spanish chapel, the ocean breeze doing little to cool my nerves, seagulls screeched overhead, and the sun blazed down on the cobblestone street, turning the day into a postcard mockery of my misery. My hands sweated, inside the silk gloves, the strapless wedding gown, a cascade of white tulle and sequins, feeling more like a costume than a dream from the outside. It was picture-perfect palm-swaying guests in linen suits and sundresses, fanning themselves with programs, the chapel's bell ringing out like a southern hymn. But this wasn't my wedding, it was hers, Lorraine's, my father's fiancée, the queen of passive-aggressive revenge. I gripped the bouquet of hibiscus flowers, their red petals wilting in the heat, and stared at the chapel doors. The chatter of the crowd drifted out. Locals, tourists, a few cousins I barely knew, all waiting to see me walk down the aisle. "She's marrying a nobody," I heard someone whisper, their jaw thick with amusement. Poor thing. My eyes flicked to the man at the altar, Jake. He stood there too still in faded jeans and a patched-up shirt, his sandy hair messy from the wind, his tanned hands rough like he'd spent years hauling nets. He didn't look nervous, he just watched me, blue eyes steady like he knew something I didn't. I hadn't even met him until yesterday. Lorraine had dropped the bomb with a smirk over iced tea on the porch. "You're always preaching about helping the less fortunate, Harper Lee Dawson," she'd said, fanning herself with a magazine. "So I found you a project." She'd laughed, her coral lipstick stretching wide. I begged my dad to stop her, but he just rubbed his temples, muttering, "She's got her mind made up, honey." He was a shrimp boat captain turned real estate dabbler, too tired to fight her anymore, so here I was in front of everyone about to marry a stranger. She'd plucked off the docks to shame me. It started a month ago down by the
St. Augustine Pier.
I'd been walking after a shift at the Marine Rescue Center, the salt air clearing my head. That's when I saw him, Jake, sitting on a bench, staring out at the waves. He wasn't begging or hustling, just there, faded ball cap torn, sneakers, a thermos of coffee beside him. Tourists shuffled past, sunburned and loud, ignoring him. I didn't. Maybe it was the way he sat, shoulders slumped but not defeated, or the way his hands rested, cracked and steady. I just grabbed a fish sandwich from the shack nearby, and on impulse I left it next to him with a bottled water, then kept walking. "Thanks." He'd called out, his voice rough but warm like the tide pulling back. I didn't look back, but it stuck with me, the gratitude, the quiet in it. I didn't tell anyone, but Lorraine found out. She'd been tailing me, I guess looking for ammo, feeding strays now. "Harper," she teased at dinner, her eyes glinting over her shrimp cocktail. "Maybe the world would be better if people like you did more." I'd shot back, too stubborn to let it go. She'd smiled, then slow and sharp, "And I should have known she was cooking something up yesterday." She'd called me to the living room, lounging in her wicker chair like a Key West dictator. My dad sat beside her, nursing a beer, avoiding my gaze. "You're getting married tomorrow," she'd said, casual as if she were picking a nail color. "To that dock rat you fed, Jake Tanner." She slid me a photo, him unshaven in that same patched shirt. My stomach sank. "No way," I'd said, laughing in disbelief. "He agreed," she'd replied, sipping her tea. "Signed the papers this morning." I turned to Dad. "You're letting this happen?" He sighed. "She says it'll quiet the gossip, keep the business steady." "Gossip? What gossip?" But Lorraine cut in, "You embarrassed me, flaunting your bleeding heart. Time to live it now." Standing at the chapel entrance, the weight of it crushed me. The preacher's voice boomed, "Do you, Harper Lee Dawson?" But my pulse drowned it out. I glanced at Jake. He met my eyes and something flickered, not pity, not shame, but a spark I couldn't place. Lorraine smirked from the front row, fanning herself, daring me to crack. "Yes," I said, loud enough to silence the whispers. Jake's yes followed firm and quick. The crowd buzzed, shock, laughter, disbelief, as he slipped the cheap ring onto my finger. His touch was warm, steady. "They won't win this," he murmured so low only I heard. I didn't know what he meant. But suddenly I wasn't facing it alone. This wasn't just her game anymore. Before we begin, a quick note: this video is a work of fiction intended for mature audiences. It contains suggestive themes and passionate storytelling designed for entertainment purposes only. There is no explicit content, violence, or real events depicted here. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're ready for a thrilling romantic tale, sit back and enjoy the reception. Was a sweaty mess of ceiling fans and sunburned smiles held in the courtyard behind the chapel. Palms rustled overhead, and the tang of salt air mixed with the smell of fried shrimp and sweet tea. Guests milled around clutching plastic cups of lukewarm beer, their voices buzzing like mosquitoes, half curious, half mocking. Lorraine strutted through it all, her floral sundress, swishing a queen basking in her twisted victory. I sat at a picnic table in my sequined gown, picking out a hush puppy, the heat making my curls frizz. Jake was next to me, quiet, his patched shirt swapped for a borrowed button-up that didn't quite fit. Every time our eyes caught, that spark from the altar flared, unsettling but not unwelcome. After the vows, he'd vanished for a bit. I figured Lorraine had dragged him off to parade her charity case groom, but when he came back he looked sharper, hair damp, like he'd splashed water on it, sleeves rolled up, a faint sunburn across his nose. He didn't slouch anymore. He sat like he'd been here before, not like some dock drifter she'd roped into this circus. I kept stealing glances, trying to figure him out. Who was this guy? I'd married a pawn, a victim, or something else. The party dragged on, steel drums, playing some off-key beach tune. I slipped away, needing a break from the stairs, and ended up by the seawall, waves lapping against the stones below. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange and pink. I kicked off my sandals, the cool concrete soothing my feet, and stared out at the horizon. Footsteps crunched behind me. Didn't peg you for a seawall kind of girl, Jake said, his voice carrying that rough warmth. I turned, surprised. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, the wind tugging at his shirt. Needed air, I said, brushing a curl from my face. This place, it's been here since the Spanish built it. Tourists love it, but I think it's just old. Rocks, he chuckled, low and easy fits though. Silence stretched thick with humidity, and something unspoken. I crossed my arms. Why'd you say yes to this? He looked out at the water, jaw tightening, then sleeping in a truck bed, eating whatever I could catch. When she offered a way out, even this, I took it. His honesty stung raw, like the salt on the breeze. That's it? I asked. He met my gaze. It's what I've got. I wanted to push back, to call him out for letting Lorraine use him, but his eyes stopped me, clear, steady, like the tide before a storm. I didn't know it was you, he added, stepping closer. Not until she showed me your picture. Then I remembered the sandwich. You didn't look down on me. My throat tightened. I won't drag you down, he said, softer. Even if you hate me for this. I swallowed. You don't owe me anything, I said, turning back to the sea, my pulse loud in my ears. Next morning I found him at the kitchen table in Dad's beach house, a mug of coffee untouched in front of him. Lorraine had insisted he move in, keep up appearances. She'd said so. There he was in my space. I almost bolted, but I grabbed a sweet tea from the fridge and sat across from him. Instead, the silence was a standoff. You don't have to act like I'm invisible, he said, a hint of a grin tugging his lips. You don't have to act like you're home, I fired back. He didn't blink. Fair, but I'm not faking it. That calm, it got under my skin like sand in a shoe. He wasn't begging for my approval, just sitting there, real. Lorraine breathed in later, all hairspray and malice. Morning newlyweds, she drawled, her voice sticky sweet. We didn't bite. She slid a manicured hand onto Jake's shoulder like he was her pet project. Looking less like a stray already, she said, smirking. He stared at his mug, unbothered. She turned to me. Dress fitting today. Harper reporters come tomorrow. Got to shine for the cameras. My gut twisted. Reporters? I asked, per day, voice tight. Big news, she said, grinning. Dawson girl saves a dock bum hash. Florida fairy tale. I gripped my glass, imagining it shattering in her face that night alone in my room. I stared at the mirror. The gown glittered, tulle sequins. A southern bride's dream, but it felt like chains. I wasn't a wife. I was a prop in Lane's game. Jake's words echoed. I won't drag you down. I didn't trust him, not yet, but he didn't feel like her tool either. Downstairs I heard him moving in the guest room, quiet, like he didn't want to disturb me. As I lay in bed, the ceiling fan whirring, I wondered, what if he wasn't just her bait? What if he was more? The days before the wedding melted into a sticky haze of heat and unspoken words. The beach house creaked with activity, maids fluffing pillows, caterers hauling ice chests, neighbors peeking over the fence with iced coffees in hand. Lorraine was a hurricane in flip-flops, barking orders about shrimp platters and string lights, her voice cutting through the hum of cicadas. I dodged her when I could, slipping out to the dock or hiding in the sunroom with a book I didn't read. But Jake, he was everywhere, not loud, not pushy, just there fishing off the pier, tinkering with a busted fan on the porch, standing by the fridge, staring at nothing. He didn't beg for space or apologies, he just existed, and it rattled me more than Lorraine's schemes. One afternoon I ducked into the sunroom to escape her latest rant about posture. Jake was already there, sprawled on the wicker sofa flipping through a dog-eared fishing magazine. He glanced up as I
froze in the doorway.
"Didn't mean to crash your spot," he said, his voice easy like a slow tide. I could have left, but I sank into the armchair, instead the fan buzzing between us. "You read?" I asked, instantly hating how dumb it sounded. He shrugged, keeps my head quiet. We didn't talk for a while, just sat, the air thick with salt and tension. I broke it. "What did she promise you?" He didn't dodge. "A fresh start," he said, setting the magazine down a bed. "Some cash, a shot at something better." I stared at the peeling paint on the wall, letting it sink in, still want it. He took his time answering, his eyes locking with mine. "Not if it's like this." That hit me plain unguarded, like a wave I didn't see coming. I didn't know what to say, so I let the silence hold us that night. A note slid under my door, rough paper, no name, just "You looked lost today. Hope it ain't because of me." I should have tossed it. I kept it instead. Next morning we bumped into each other on the stairs. Literally, I was hauling laundry down, distracted, and crashed into him. My towel pile toppled, and I yelped, "Shoot." "Sorry," I snapped, flustered. He steadied me with a hand on my arm. "Easy," he said, grabbing a towel to hand back. I pulled away quick, but his touch lingered, warm, solid. "I'm good," I muttered, my face burning. He looked at me and something shifted in his gaze. Not pity, but a quiet knowing, like he saw past my mess. "Got to run," I said, bolting before he could reply. I didn't run anywhere, just stood in the kitchen, heart hammering. Lorraine wasn't letting up that afternoon. She dragged us to the backyard for some cheesy local blog piece called "Love on the Mentor Low Tide." She posed us by the dock, her in a floppy hat, Jake in a borrowed polo, me stiff as a board in my gown. Closer, the photographer hollered, sweat beading on his brow. Jake's shoulder brushed mine, and I tensed. He noticed I don't bite. He whispered, barely audible. I didn't answer, smile. "Y'all," the guy cheered. I tried, but it was fake. Jake saw it, his eyes lingering too long. Another note came that night. "You don't got to fake it for them." I get it. I tucked it away with the first wedding morning hit, like a freight train. The house was still, no breeze, just heavy quiet. Pressing down at dawn, two stylists barged in with the gown, fussing over my hair and makeup, chattering about curls and bronzer like I wasn't there. They didn't ask if I was okay. I wasn't. By guests trickled in flip-flops, slapping sunburned noses, sniffing out drama. "She's tying the knot with a drifter," they muttered, sipping mimosas. I walked through it, chin up, refusing to crack at. They herded me to the chapel. It was postcard, pretty stained glass, Seebsy sneaking through the cracks, a guitar strumming something. Twangy Jake stood at the altar, taller somehow in that borrowed shirt and jeans, his face unreadable, but not blank. The crowd watched, like sharks circling chum. I started down the aisle, each step await Lorraine's grin, slicing me from the front row. I reached him, avoiding his eyes, focusing on the preacher's drone. But when he took my hand, I looked up. He looked uncertain, not weak, not ashamed, just real. For a split second, I wondered if he was as trapped as me. Then the vows started and the tide began to turn. The preacher's voice rolled over the chapel like a lazy wave. "Do you, Harper Lee Dawson, take this man?" The words faded under the roar in my head. The air was thick, humid, salty, pressing against my skin. Guests fanned themselves with programs, their eyes boring into me, waiting for me to buckle. Lorraine sat front and center, floppy hat tilted just so her smile, a smug slash of coral lipstick. My hands shook in the silk gloves, my legs wobbly under the tulle. I didn't want this, but I wouldn't let her see me fall. "Yes," I said, my voice cutting through the whispers like a knife. Jake went next. "Yes," he said, quick and firm, no hesitation. The chapel buzzed gasps. Snickers a ripple of disbelief. The rings came cheap silver bands. Lorraine had picked to mock us, glinting dully in the light. When he slid mine on, his fingers were warm, steady, a lifeline. I didn't expect. I fumbled with his, brushing the calluses on his hands. Not from begging, but from something harder, older. The crowd stirred and then the laughter hit. She's hitched to a dock rat. Someone hooted, their twang sharp. It spread loud, mean. Lorraine lifted her mimosa, toasting her win. I wanted to bolt instead. I stood there rooted. Jake didn't shrink, his jaw tightened, his stance shifted, and he leaned close. They don't get this, he whispered. Just for me. Before I could react, he turned to the preacher. Hold up, I got something to say. The room jolted, heads snapped, phones peeked out from purses. Lorraine's grin faltered. Jake, I hissed, panic spiking, but he looked at me, eyes fierce and soft. Trust me, he murmured. My breath snagged. The preacher blinked, confused, as Jake faced a guy in the back, older, grizzled, sitting quiet in a faded cap. You said to keep it shut, Jake said to him, voice low but clear. But I can't. Not here.
Not with her.
The man nodded, barely a signal. My heart pounded. Lorraine's hat tilted as she tensed. Jake turned to the crowd. This ain't what you think. I'm not what you think. The air thickened, electric. Didn't start out on the docks, he said, standing taller. I got there 'cause someone wanted me gone. Whispers erupted, chairs scraping. My name's Jake Colt, and son of Travis Colton, heir to Colton Fishing. At least I was, till I got scrubbed out. The chapel exploded, gasps, shouts, chaos. My knees buckled. I grabbed the altar to stay up. Colton Fishing, Dad had talked about it. A shrimp empire that ruled the coast till Travis died, leaving rumors of a lost kid with a scar like a fish hook. That was Jake. Lorraine lurched up. That's a lie, she screeched, her voice cracking, a damn fairy tale. Jake didn't blink. I grew up with scraps, nets, boats, a song my mom hummed, then nothing, street shelters, till he nodded at the back, spotted me, saw the scar. Nobody else did. He tugged his sleeve up, showing a faint curved mark on his forearm. Dad's story clicked. The Colton boy had a hook scar. The world tilted. I stared at Lorraine, her face ashen, her hands clutching her hat. You knew, Jake said, pinning her with his gaze. You hooked up with Travis after he died, took the company, but I was in the way. A kid who could claim it all, so you ditched me. The crowd went dead, quiet, some gaping, some clutching pearls. Dropped me in Jacksonville. He went on, paid a guy to say I washed up dead, wiped me out till I landed where you wanted. Nowhere. Lorraine's laugh was shrill, brittle. Prove it, boy. I can. He cut in. The grizzled guy stepped up, holding a folder, DNA papers, witnesses, and I did. Dad stumbled forward from the side, beer gut trembling. This true? He rasped. Jake nodded. Dad turned to Lorraine. You said he was gone. Let me think. Travis's kid was fish food. She shook her head, mute, her empire cracking. The preacher coughed. We finish in this. Jake looked at me, a half smile breaking through. If she'll have me. I stared at him. This stranger, I judged. P.Ed married, and saw someone new. The drifter was gone. The air stood tall. Lorraine, she was thinking. It ended in hush. No cheers, just stunned silence. Guests shuffled out, dodging Lorraine's glare, muttering like they'd seen a ghost. She tried to storm off, but two cops waited outside, khakis, crisp badges glinting. What's this? She snapped. Jake didn't answer, just nodded to the guy with the folder, who handed over more proof. Fakes, bribes, a paper trail. They didn't cuff her yet, but she wasn't walking free. Her eyes flashed. Fear, real fear. And me, I felt the sand shift. Not to ruin, but to something wild and open. The chapel doors swung shut, but the weight of what happened followed me back to the beach house. I sat on the porch steps, barefoot, still in my tulle gown, watching the sun sink into the Atlantic. The sky burned, orange waves crashing in the distance. A salty breeze tugging at my curls. Jake eased down beside me, his borrowed shirt untucked, sleeves rolled up. He didn't crowd me, just sat close, his presence steady like the tide. Lorraine was gone, hauled off by her own lies, but her echo lingered. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt untethered, like a boat cut loose. She's losing it all, huh? I asked, my voice soft against the surf. Jake nodded, staring at the horizon. Everything she took. I traced a crack in the step with my toe. The reality settling in. You want her to hurt for it. He frowned, thinking it over. Nah, just want her to stop wrecking folks that hit me. Simple, honest. No venom. He wasn't out for blood. Just peace. It made me see him clearer. Past the drifter mask Lorraine had pinned on him. Next morning the news hit like a squall. Headlines blasted across phones and TVs lost. Colton Air resurfaces. Widow's shrimp empire built. On lies, tourists gawked from the pier, snapping pics of the house, their flip-flops slapping the boardwalk. Reporters camped out front, hollering for a quote over the roar of boat motors. I peeked through the blinds, my stomach nodding. They wanted dirt. Tears, a circus. Jake didn't play along. He put out a statement, short, sharp. This is personal, not a show. Leave us be. It worked. Sort of. The storm thinned by noon. The house felt different after that. The maids tiptoed around, swapping gossip. For quick nods, Lorraine's accounts got locked. Her lawyers bailed her beach club pals. Ghosted by Friday charges. Dropped fraud, forgery. Some fancy term about hiding an heir. I snorted at that one, the thin sound bouncing off the kitchen tiles. She wasn't the headline anymore. Jake was the kid who'd made it through, who'd come back with grit, not hate me. I was still figuring out my place in it that night. Sleep wouldn't come, not because of the wedding or Lorraine's crash, but him, the way he'd looked at me in the chapel. Not a stranger, not a burden, but a partner in the chaos. I padded downstairs, barefoot on the cool wood drawn to the dark. He was in the living room, slouched by the open window, the ocean breeze ruffling his hair. He glanced up. You too, huh? He said, voice low. I shook my head and sat on the couch's edge, the hum of waves filling the quiet. It wasn't empty, it was alive. Why'd you say yes? I asked again, digging deeper. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I was scrapping by fishing, crashing wherever she dangled a lifeline, even if it was rigged. I grabbed it. He grinned crooked. Didn't reckon on this. Wasn't it humiliating? I pressed. Sure, he said, eyes glinting. But not how they figured. I tilted my head. How's that? He looked right at me. They thought I'd sink you, but they don't get you, do they? My breath caught. What's that mean? You fed me without a second thought, he said. Never acted like I was trash. You're here now talking when you could be hiding upstairs. I swallowed his words, sinking in like sand underfoot. Maybe I should be hiding. I said maybe, he replied, still watching me. But you ain't. It stuck with me, heavy and warm, like a truth. I dodged. We sat there the night folding around us, porch lights flickering outside. I hated you at first, I blurted. He raised an eyebrow. Not you, just this being forced. He nodded like he'd guessed it. Me too. We both grinned. Real rough around the edges grins. Before we split, he said, Night Harper, just my name. No frills. It landed different, like a key. Turning next day, Dad caught me on the dock, his fishing hat shading red-rimmed eyes. I'm sorry, darling, he mumbled, voice thick. She had me believing it had save face. I didn't hug him. Not yet, but I nodded. We'll figure it, I said. He exhaled, relieved. Jake watched from the porch, giving us room. I didn't feel so alone anymore. Not with Lorraine out, not with him here that evening as the sun dipped low. I caught his eye across the yard. He wasn't just her trap. He was something solid, something growing for the first time. I wondered what we could be, not her puppets, but us. Weeks after that forced wedding, State Augustine started feeling less like a trap. The beach house softened, sunlight spilled through the blinds. The hum of the AC, mixing with the crash of waves outside. Lorraine's shadow was gone, leaving space I didn't know I'd craved. I took to walking the shore at dawn, barefoot in the sand, letting the surf wash away the weight. Jake was around too, not in my face, just there, casting a line off the dock, strumming an old guitar on the porch, catching my eye with that quiet look that made my stomach flip. I didn't resent him anymore. I wasn't sure what I felt, but it was shifting. One evening, he found me by the seawall lot at dusk. The sky blazed pink, and gold pelicans gliding low over the water. He wasn't dressed up, just a faded t-shirt and shorts, bare like me, his hair messy from the breeze. He looked nervous, hands jammed in his pockets. Got something for you, he said, voice rough but steady. My heart skipped as he pulled out a small shell box. Inside was a ring, not the cheap silver from before, but a thin band of coral and silver, a tiny pearl glinting in the light. It was simple beach he picked. I didn't get to ask you right last time, he said, stepping closer. Want to do it now? He dropped to one knee in the sand, and I gasped, hand flying to my mouth. Harper Lee Dawson. He started low. And sure you didn't pick me. You got stuck in something ugly, and you held your head up higher than anybody could have. Now if you say yes, I want to marry you for real. My chest tightened, not from dread, but from something bright and alive. He wasn't pushing or pleading. He was giving me a choice. Yes, I breathed, then louder. Yes, I do. He stood, slipping the ring on my finger, his touch lingering, warm, electric. We didn't kiss right off, just stood there, the waves whispering, his eyes searching mine like he couldn't believe it. Days later we did it again. Our way. No cameras, no crowd, just Dad, a couple buddies from the rescue center, and the dock. At sunset I wore a flowy sundress, pale blue like the sea. He wore a white shirt sleeves, rolled up, sand on his feet. We wrote our own vows. His were short, gruff. I fell for you the day you didn't look through me. Mine shook as I spoke. I thought this had drowned me. But you're the one who pulled me up when we kissed. It wasn't flashy, just us, salty and real. Like the coast we stood on. Dad clapped, wiping his eyes, his fishing hat crooked. Our friends whooped, tossing beer cans in the air. We didn't cut cake or dance to some playlist. We sat on the dock, feet dangling, passing a cooler of sweet tea, and laughing till the stars popped out. It wasn't the big wedding I'd imagined as a kid, fancy dresses and a band, but it was better. It was mine. Ours. After that, things settled, not into a movie ending, but something sturdy. We didn't ditch the beach house or chase headlines. We stayed, letting St. Augustine fold around us like a worn shirt. The reporters fizzled out when we didn't feed their frenzy, and the gossip died down. Jake stopped tensing when folks called him Colton. I started calling him Anchor without thinking, slipping it into quiet moments, like when he'd hand me a coffee or tug me close at night. Some days we just sat him, fishing, me reading the quiet, feeling full. Those days were gold, but we didn't stay idle. Long months in, we kicked off something new, not for show but woo, woo. Walton Dawson Fund, a gig for kids like Jake, had been adrift, forgotten, and girls like me, shaped to please, before they could breathe. Boats for fishing lessons, scholarships, a safe spot to crash, not handouts, but hands up. Jake wanted to rewrite what start over meant. I wanted no one to feel muzzled. We dove in steady and low-key. No big launch party. It wasn't about burying the past. It was about growing from it. Dad pitched in, sometimes awkward at first. He'd apologized again one night, on the porch, voice cracking. Should have stopped her harp. I didn't hug him then, but next time I did. Quick, rough. We're good, I said. And we were getting there. Jake watched, always giving me room, but never far. That night, sprawled on the couch with the windows open, I looked at him, really looked, and saw more than Lorraine's bait. I saw the guy who'd chosen me back. Whatever came next, storms, calm, all of it, we'd ride it out together. A year after our real wedding, St. Augustine felt like it belonged to us. The beach house turned into something alive. Screen doors, banging, coffee brewing. At dawn, Jake's low whistle, drifting in from the dock. I'd catch him out there, rod in hand, sketching fish on a napkin. When the bites were slow, "You're my catch," he'd say, winking, and I'd laugh, swatting him with a towel. But it warmed me through. We weren't flawless, no Hollywood glow, when we argued over who forgot the ice, but we had calm. For me, that was more than enough. The Colton Dawson Fund took root, steady as the tides. We set up fishing camps for kids who'd never held a pole, paid for books, and counselors gave them a spot to just be. Jake would sit with them, showing how to bait a hook, his voice quiet, but sure, telling them they weren't throwaways. I'd watch, my throat tight, knowing he'd been that kid lost. Till he wasn't. I worked with the girls, teaching them they didn't have to smile for anyone, that their words counted. One day, a shy teen I mentored hugged me, whispering, "You get it." Jake grinned at me across the dock and mouthed, "We're doing it." That was us, two castaways hauling others ashore. Lorraine slipped into the background, a faded postcard she'd shipped, a plea months back. No courtroom drama, just a quiet fade. Fraud lies, the whole net of it unraveled. She lost the boats, the condo, the life. She'd snatched word was she rented a trailer down in Daytona now alone, her tan fading with her clout. I didn't cheer when I heard didn't hate her either, not 'cause I let it go easy, but 'cause she didn't own me anymore. The day I stopped caring, I felt the wind shift like I'd finally exhaled. Jake noticed you're lighter, he said one morning, handing me a coffee real light. I hadn't seen it till he pointed it out. Dad became a regular shadow around us. He'd roll up to fund events, ball cap pulled low, lugging coolers of soda for the kids. One evening he cornered me by the grill, eyes watery. I messed up, Harp let her run me ragged. His voice broke rough as oyster shells. I didn't rush in, not yet, but next visit I hugged him quick and firm. We're square, I said, meaning it. He started showing up Sundays, frying fish with Jake, asking about the kids. We helped. It wasn't picture perfect, but it was ours. We were patching it up slow and steady on our anniversary. Jake took me back to that chapel, not for show, just us. The pews sat empty, the stained glass dim, no preacher droning. He held my hand, the quiet, thick and sweet, no fuss. This time, he said, pulling a scrap of paper from his pocket, wrote you something, one line. I grinned, my chest tight. Let's hear it. He looked at me full on like I was the only thing in the world, and said, I'd pick you every damn day. Tears stung, not from hurt but from something deep and good. I didn't have a line ready, so I kissed him slow, salty. The past washing out with the tide. We walked out after, no fancy ride, just us strolling the boardwalk. We grabbed fish tacos from a truck, sat on a bench by the pier, and laughed till my ribs ached. A kid ran by, kite in hand, and pointed at Jake. He's like a pirate, he yelled. Jake chuckled, turning to me. Only 'cause you're my treasure. I rolled my eyes, but he grabbed my hand, thumb brushing the coral ring. That moment, greasy fingers seeds us, was all I'd ever known. I needed. Folks still ask how it wrapped up, this dock to dream's tale. Nobody bet on. I say it didn't wrap, it rolled on. We might move one day, fix up a boat, bicker over bait till we're old and gray. But I'll never shake who I was before, the girl who left a sandwich for a stranger, who thought kindness was a risk till it anchored her. Jake says, I hooked him that day by the pier, but he's got it backward. He reeled me in with a chance to start fresh. Now as I stand on our dock watching him cast into the sunset, I know this love ain't roses or big bands, it's the grit to stay, to mend, to grow. Lorraine tried to sink us, but she handed me him instead. That's the real catch. Not the wedding, not the lies, but the life we netted after a life, where I wake to his snores, where he calls me home, where we're free. Not just from her but for each other. It's not a storybook, it's better, it's us.